In some sort of an explosion of light, the soul of Alexandros Mograine comes out of it. It is the cleansed soul of Alexandros Mograine, and the soul of Darion splits in half, and a younger version of himself appears. This theme of soul split is quite prevalent in World of Warcraft. And uncover the light of dawn. Uncover the light of dawn? What? With the forces of the Argent Dawn, and uncover the light of dawn. How am I gonna uncover the light of dawn? What does this even mean? What to have?
Another time.
The light of dawn uncovered. Oh my god, I'm loving these quests. This is literally the coolest quest that I've seen in this game. Maybe. It's all about the light, so now I'm like the most evil bastard ever, but so the presumption is that the light is not real, or there's no light, as the Lich King says, but in reality, like it is the light of dawn. Oh my god.
We have all been witness to a terrible tragedy. The blood of good men has been shed upon this soil. Honorable knights, slain defending their lives. Our lives.
Who
And
is
while
that?
such things can never be forgotten, we must remain vigilant in our cause.
The light right there.
The Lich King must answer for what he has done, and must not be allowed to cause further destruction in our world.
Okay.
I make a promise to you now, brothers and sisters. The Lich King will be defeated. On this day, I call for a union. The Argent Dawn and the Order of the Silver Hand will
Order of
come
the Silver
together as
Hand.
one. We will succeed where so many before us have failed. We will take the fight to Arthas, and we will tear down the walls of Icecrown.
Oh my
The
god.
Argent Crusade comes for you, Arthas!
At this point, I think I got in a little bit late into the quote-unquote RP, but looking back on it, I think I got in at the time that I had to get in, and I saw what I had to see, especially after the whole setup of the Lich King saying that there is no light, that the light has abandoned you, and so on and so forth. It makes you, the game makes it very obvious. It wants you to understand that the light is a real thing, even before when you go into the quest of the Path of Redemption and you start reading the Path of Redemption, which I made a video of, and I'm gonna link it somewhere on the screen. They tell you about a story of Scarlet Crusader who had some sort of a transcendental experience and actually heard the light talking to them. So in the midst of the Lich King going to his rampage of destruction and death, you come to understand that the light is a real thing. And I was just perplexed looking at the light going into the cosmos, going into the quote-unquote heavens, as it is told in TBC. When the Draenei come, they say something along the lines of those who came from the heavens. So the whole concept of the light being this cosmic phenomenon rather than something else or something dogmatic or something even tied to religion, which would be not so great for a video game. I find the whole thing so amazing, and I'm kind of glad that I got in a little bit late, because I was so lost with this story. I was like, why suddenly Darion Mograine is a good guy? And it made me go into the actual lore and digging deeper why the whole thing happened, and I found some amazing things. And I think I'm gonna go a little bit beyond the lore here, because we all know the lore and it's good, for as good as it can be for a cinematic from 2007 in a cartoonish video game, but the theme overall goes a little bit beyond the lore. It turns out that after Darion defeated his father in Axramas and gained the corrupted Ashbringer, he realized that the soul of his father was trapped inside the blade. So I found an article online, and there was a little paragraph that I read. It says, in a dream, Darion was visited by Fairbanks, now long dead, and told to seek out Tirion Fortring. Fortring was in exile, once a noble paladin, now a mere hermit on the edge of the eastern plaguelands. He was reluctant to offer any help to Darion, telling the boy that nothing could be done. Eventually, he came around and suggested that only an act of love could save Alexandros, an act of love greater than the act of evil that claimed his father's soul. I found this completely amazing, because even though this is a cartoonish game with what people think is a simple lore, simple story, we're talking about fratricide, we're talking about patricide, we're talking about the whole trauma of Alexandros Mograine, and how this act of hate, this act of evil completely corrupted the soul of Alexandros Mograine. As if he lost all the hope in the light, in everything that is good and righteous, very much as Tirion did. And so the way to counter all of this is an act of love. Now, going a little bit beyond the lore, as I said, if you go a little bit into real life research, when people are close to dying, are having a quote-unquote near-death experience, they come with reports of meeting a light, and oftentimes, not oftentimes, all the times, they explain a feeling of quote-unquote love, not love as we understand it, maybe as in relationships and so on and so forth, but love as a vital energy, as a real force that they cannot even begin to understand. They talk about ecstasy, they talk about the greatest experience that they've had in their lives, and this is while they are having some sort of a near-death experience. So I find it amazing that within the fantasy narratives, between the fiction that we consume, we find these little bits of what perhaps could be a larger truth. Whether the developers knew about this correlation with a theme of light and love, or whether it's a coincidence, I'm not really sure, but I think it's important to bring it out, especially with what happens next in Darion's story. That night, Darion dreamed again. It was a restless dream of drowning in black and inky depths, his father's soul just out of reach. Now, I find the whole thing about him dreaming of these inky depths, drowning in black, very interesting, because very recently, as going through Undead's lore, I found about this twisted nether, about the void, which is the in-between of the realms, and what happened after the light and the void collided, or something of that nature, which is some sort of void. Now, as I said, and as I am going beyond the lore, this is a real thing as well that people explain before they meet such light. But what I find interesting in the narrative here is that he is thinking about his father. He has this need to set him free. It goes on, in the morning the Argent Dawn gathered to defend the chapel and soon engaged in the first Battle of Light's Hope. It was a bloodbath, but just as the tide of battle seemed to turn against the Argent Dawn, Tirion Fortring arrived. With his help, they slowly began to gain more ground, and then Kel'Thuzad joined battle. Darion, Ashbringer in hand, bravely left to battle the Lich, but it did little to stop Kel'Thuzad, and then it occurred to Darion what Tyrion's words meant, what he must do. In one swift action, Darion ran himself through the Ashbringer. His final words were of love for his father, and in response the world exploded in light. 1,000 vengeful souls burst forth with 1,000 columns of reckoning, obliterating the scourge and purging it from the land. As he lay dying, Darion heard his father's voice one final time, free of corruption, with nothing but words of love for his son. And in the end, all that remained of the scourge were two figures on a hill, Kel'Thuzad and Darion Mograine. So it was not about Darion just going out there and fight with the Ashbringer and just kill as many undead as he could. It was about him making a higher sacrifice and just making an act of love and turning his soul to redeem his father, as he was afraid of his father just dripping into oblivion, dripping into this black inky realm, perhaps a twisted nether, the in-between, nowhere close to the light. So he did this act of sacrifice, and I find it amazing that it says is the words of love from the son to the father and from the father to the son. There's a lot of meaning in all of this. People think it's just about big damage and it's a simple story. It's not. It's quite more complicated than this. Another thing that I find quite interesting is that this light sort of contained this light that came from the heavens after he made this sacrifice. It contained the souls of a town. It was 1,000 vengeful souls, it says, and it's the souls of all these warriors, knights and paladins who were fighting in Lord Darion and were brought to Lies Hope Chapel. This is what lies beneath the chapel. It's the souls of these warriors, knights and paladins. I find it amazing because then a lot of questions arise. Is the light made of these souls? What's happening here? So on and so forth. So no and yes, if you go into the story of creation of World of Warcraft, before the void, before souls, before anything, there was light. So it is obvious that this light contains the souls of these warriors, but not only of these warriors, but every soul. So this theme is much larger, as I say, and what I find interesting about the whole thing is that these theories exist in the real world. There's a lot of mythologies which contain this very story, that at the beginning there was the light. So I find the whole correlation interesting. So the sacrifice that Darion Mograine did came at a cost, of course. Tirion went on to become a dead knight indeed, and succumbed to what is called the eternal hunger or something like that, where the dead knights, they have to inflict pain and suffering. He was controlled by the Lich King, he was controlled by these dark evil forces, but all throughout he was a victim. And at the moment when you're going through the Dead Knight's status zone, and then you do this final quest, the Light of Dawn, and you get to the fight, even though I missed it, I know what happened, and I looked into it, and I find it very, very interesting, because it is exactly at the time when Tirion casts his judgment upon Darion, and he tells him, like, you don't understand, boy, and he starts just berating him, when something very interesting occurs. In some sort of an explosion of light, the soul of Alexandros, Mograine, comes out of it. It is the cleansed soul of Alexandros Mograine, and the soul of Darion splits in half, and a younger version of himself appears. This theme of soul split is quite prevalent in World of Warcraft, which I find interesting as well, but I'm not gonna go into that right now. What I find interesting, that this is a theme from his life where Darion wants to be a champion like his father, and he wants to rid Lord Darion from the Scourge, and his father tells him, one day you will wield the sword, you will wield the Ashbringer, but that day is not today. So he's having some sort of a review of a time in his life, and I'm going a little bit beyond the lore, as I've been doing here and there in this video, and I'm gonna be doing in the future. I find interesting that again the theme of light is present, and I've been doing this research of near-death experiences, and what happens in these near-death experiences is that people revisit times in their life, scenes from their life which are meaningful to them, and some others that aren't, but they are having some sort of a review of the things that they did in their life. So I find interesting that they are putting this theme of the light and then the souls coming out of it, and having this sort of a life scene that is somehow meaningful to Darion, and it's gonna be key in his redemption as a Dead Knight. What happens next in the story is that the Lich King comes out as this counter force, this counter essence to the light, and he's about to kill everyone, but then out of nowhere Darion sort of reacts, and he throws the corrupted Ashbringer to Tirion, and Tirion, with the power of the light, being the uncorruptible paladin that he is, he simply turns the corrupted Ashbringer into the light, and he uses it to sort of defeat the Lich King, at least for the time being, and save the day. So it's just the regular story, the regular narrative. But I found all throughout these little themes of the light being related to this quote-unquote love or acts of love instead of just battling or whatever, and always the light being tied to these scenes of the afterlife, or of ghosts, or for souls coming out of nowhere and giving people some sort of message, some sort of purpose, some sort of something. The relation with the real life research, I found it really interesting that this is, and I'm not saying the developers knew about any of this and they created the game after maybe the research of what they read. What I think and what I believe is that there might be a larger reality and a larger truth than most of us know or understand, and this larger truth or reality kind of emanates into all sorts of human expression, whether it's music, film, television, or even video games. And I find a lot of value in this. If you would like to know more about the lore surrounding these fantasy narratives and how they perhaps connect to real life theories and philosophies, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, as I will try to find these connections and explore the possibilities that these lores can provide. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.